Hello guys and welcome to today's session. Today we are going to talk about app development and get some insights into Android Studio and Xamarin. So guys, this session is from Intune's perspective, I would say that this is a good to know session and not a need to know session. The reason why this is a good to know session is later on I am going to show you guys in a different nugget how to integrate Intune SDK into our code so that we can apply MAM policies to our LOB application. And that would be difficult for us if we don't have the basics of app development set. If we have never taken a look over Android Studio, if we have never taken a look over Xamarin or Xcode, if we have never taken a look over the source code of any APK or IPA, then directly doing integration of Intune SDK or MSAL is going to be difficult for us because we won't be able to understand what a layout is or what a class is or what a method is, right? So in this session, we are going to talk about what are the various. So let me just show you guys the agenda. So this is what I have in store. First, we are going to talk about the background, as in what are the things that I need to consider before I start developing my own in-house LOB applications. What are the prerequisites or what are the requirements and all that stuff. Then we are going to talk about mobile application framework and development tools, wherein we will see all the different options that are available to me before I start developing an application for Android or iOS. As you might be aware, there are so many different programming languages, so many different tools, right? Given that I'm assuming that we are not inherently developers, we are an Intune admin and we are learning this on a good to know basis. So keeping that in mind, it is important for us to know, to familiarize ourselves with the various terms that a developer deals with and what are the various considerations that he has to take into account before he starts developing an application. And then obviously, what are the things that we must keep in mind before developing an application? What are the caveats or what are the tips and tricks? And then we are going to switch right over into the demo, wherein we are going to develop two applications, both of them. So the first one would be in Android Studio. Nothing fancy, we'll just develop a normal basic application, maybe a calculator application or stuff like that. First in Android Studio, and we'll be getting a APK from there, and then we will be developing an application in Xamarin. Okay, so from Xamarin, so we will understand more about Xamarin and how is it different from Android Studio and what is the output that we get from Xamarin, and we'll talk about forms and all that stuff. Okay, so I'm very excited for today's session, and this is again just setting the preface before we get right into the session wherein we are going to talk about Intune SDK integration and MSAL integration. Okay, all right, so let's just first talk about the background. So let's say that I am an app developer and my organization wants me to develop an application, right? So what are the things that I have to consider before I start developing the application? Well, obviously, it goes without saying that, I will choose the programming language, and I will choose, or my team will choose the programming language, or my team will choose the programming platform depending upon the features that are needed in the application. Right? Let's say that, for example, my application needs to access some part of the operating system, right? Let's say it needs to access the GPS or the battery, right? And so therefore, I cannot go ahead and make a progressive app or a web app, right? Because that does not have that kind of privilege, right? So what I'm trying to, we'll talk all about that later on, but what I'm trying to say is there are a lot of factors outside the framework that we are going to choose and outside the programming language that we are going to choose, which impacts the performance of our application. And what are those things? Well, the first, I mean, these are all given. That is the development cost and the maintenance cost, the time available for developing the application, and the features needed. Why am I explicitly calling this out? I am explicitly calling this out because in the next slide, we are going to see all the different frameworks available to us, and the development cost, the maintenance cost, as well as the energy that we are spending in developing the application is going to vary depending upon the framework that we are choosing. Okay, so I mean, I wanted to set the background first and let you know that this is one of the important consideration that an app developer has to make before he, or maybe the team, or maybe the manager who is managing the app development team has to make before he go ahead and decides to build an application. Okay. All right. So now this is a summary of the mobile app framework or the development tools that we have in the market right now. Okay. And an app developer has the ability of choosing amongst all these different frameworks. Well, obviously, each of these frameworks have something that is unique to them. They have something which is like few of the features might be common with the other platforms or other tools as well, right? So we are going to understand what is the segregation based upon, and how should one be choosing. And then, as I said, we are going to develop an application in this right from scratch, a basic application, but we are going to develop one using Android Studio and using Xamarin. Right now, I don't have access to a Mac device. Otherwise, I would have shown you guys how to use Xcode as well. But I'm saving that for later. Probably when I do a session on DEP over there, I'll be showing you guys what Xcode is and how we can make use of that. Okay. All right. So here is what the segregation is. When we are going to develop an application, we have widely three options available. We can make something called a first-party native application, or we can make something called a progressive or a responsive web application, or we can make something called an hybrid application. Okay, so I know these are all heavy terms. Let's try and understand what does all these three mean. So first we'll talk about the first party native application, because this is, in my opinion, the most used one. Okay, so maybe 7 out of 10 times as an Intune admin, whenever we are getting a case which is related to app development or app integration with SDK or MSAL, the application would have been developed either in Android Studio for Android or Xcode for iOS. If not this, then probably maybe Xamarin. And well, obviously the developer has a wide range of options, but I am letting you guys know what is the main front runner. Okay. So guys, if we are talking about the first party native application, let's take a closer look into this. What does first party native application mean? So in case of first party native application, we are using the app Android. So Android Studio is nothing but, you can think of it like a framework, but at the end of the day, it's a installer that we are installing. Think of it like an application. Okay, so think of it like an application or an interface that we are installing, just like Visual Studio. We are installing Android Studio into our device, and we write our code in Android Studio. And what is the output of that code? The output of that code is .apk. All right. Similarly, the same thing happens for Xcode as well. It's just, I mean, think of it like a tool that we are using to develop a .ipa, which later on is published to the devices, and then the application gets installed. Okay. So now, who has developed the Android Studio tool? It is Google. And who has developed the Xcode tool? It is Apple. Now we are using Android Studio developed by Google to develop an application called .apk to develop an application with the extension .apk, obviously, which is going to install in an Android device, and that Android device is running with Android operating system, obviously, and that Android system is developed by whom? That Android operating system is also developed by Google, right? Therefore, this is referred to as first party native app. Similarly, Xcode is a tool which is developed by Apple. It is used to develop an application with the extension .ipa, which installs an application in an iOS device, and that iOS device is running obviously with the operating system iOS, and that iOS is also developed by Apple, right? Therefore, we are calling this first party native app, okay? Because over here we are using the tool which is created by the creator of the operating system. Later on we will see there are many other tools, and using all these tools we can using this as well as using Xamarin and using Flutter and React Native, we can, using all these, we can develop an APK or IPA, right? And that APK is going to install in an Android operating system, and IPA is going to install in an iOS operating system, right? But that operating system is not built by them. That operating system is built by Google or Apple, right? So in this case, therefore they don't make it into this list of first party native apps, right? So I mean, it was like quite self-explanatory. First party native app means the applications which we are building using tools that is created by the creator of the operating system. And the advantage that we get when we use the first party native, when we develop an application using the first party native apps, that is Android Studio or Xcode, is we get a native UI experience. What I mean by that is, if I develop an application using Android Studio, and once that application is developed, once I'm installing that application in an Android device, that application would look like it's an application for Android. What I mean by that is, if you're developing an application from any other tool, there is a chance that the application might not look like it's an Android application. Meaning, I mean, in many of the cases you would have seen that all the icons in your phone, all the application icons in your phone look a specific way. But there might be that one odd icon for a one odd application which looks a little strange. Like for example, all the other icons for applications are rectangular and have rounded edges and have a shadow or stuff like that. But there is that one odd application which is round and does not have a shadow, and the display name of that icon is different, right? So it doesn't look seamless. So what I'm trying to say is, if we are developing an application using Android Studio or Xcode, that is, if we are developing any application using the first party native apps, wherein these two are first party native apps, then the application that we get, that looks and feels as if it was natively installed in that operating system. As in, like for example, if I have an Android device, there are some native apps in that Android device, right? Like for example, the contact list app or the messaging app, right? So this application that we are going to develop using Android Studio, it would also look and feel just like that contact app application or that messaging application. So the look and feel would exactly be the same, because, well, as I said, we are developing it using Android Studio, which is developed by the creator of the operating system. Because we are using the first party tools, whenever Apple or Google releases a new API, it will be there in the Xcode as well as in the Android Studio the same day. So we don't have to worry about the support, and we don't have to worry about falling behind, right? That is one of the advantages. So the major advantage that we are getting from Android Studio and Xcode is, well, obviously it looks and feels like the application is a native application which was natively designed for that OS itself. It doesn't feel like the application has been, I mean, designed for something else and we have just installed it into the device, right? It looks and feels real. However, there is one drawback. The drawback is, let's say that I have to develop an application called X, okay? And this application is related to payroll, Okay, so my organization's development team is going to put this application together, and this application is going to be used by everybody in the organization irrespective of their designation, and they are going to download their pay slips or related or look into information related to payroll. Okay, so well, obviously my users can have an Android device as well as iOS device, so I have to develop two versions of this applications, right? One for Android and one for iOS, which means that I need to develop an APK for this application and an IPA for this application, which means that we need to write the code of this application in Android Studio, as well as we need to write the code of this application in Xcode as well, right? And more often than not, it would be two different teams who will be taking care of this. The logic is going to remain the same because ultimately the application is doing the same thing, but then the code is not going to remain the same, right? Because if you're doing it in Android Studio, you will be probably using Java or Kotlin. If you're using Xcode, you'll probably be using C# or Swift or stuff like that. So what I'm trying to say is even though the functionality of both the applications is going to be the same, but the code that we are going to write in both the applications is going to be different. So why is this a challenge? This is a challenge because we have to develop uh, two versions of the same application, right? Obviously, developing them is a challenge, and then once they have been developed, we have to maintain those two versions as well. So, I mean, and then upgrade those two versions as well. So it is not just that we have written it once and we are done with. We have to obviously maintain them. We have to make sure that we are running the bug checks. We are uh, doing the housekeeping related stuff, and then whenever the upgrade needs to be done or new feature needs to be released, it needs to be released for both the applications. But anyways, before we go to that, if we need to let's say that there was an application called X which we were going to develop, so the IPA version of X, meaning, so again, I mean, just in case I haven't said it before, if we are developing an application, that application, when it gets installed in an Android device, it has an extension of .apk. Okay, that is Android package, and that is the Android package that gets installed in the end device. And if we are developing an application called X which later on needs to be installed in an iOS device, then it has an extension of .ipa. Okay, maybe we are not that much familiar with these extensions. Probably we are more familiar with the extensions for Windows, right? We would have seen .msi or .exes or stuff like that. But for Android and iOS, there are only two extensions, that is .apk and .ipa respectively. Okay. All right. So let's say that we are going to use the first party native app, that is Xcode, to develop an iOS application. What do I need to do for that? I need to get my hands on a macOS device. I need to install a tool called Xcode. Xcode is nothing but think of it just like Visual Studio. It's an integrated development environment. And then when we are writing the code for our application, we can choose amongst the languages that this framework supports. So Xcode, like for example, as I said, it supports Swift and Objective-C. Right? Not C#, it supports Swift and Objective-C. Similarly, for Android, if we are developing an application and .apk, we can choose amongst Java and Kotlin. We will be using Java to develop an application when we are in the demo section. Okay. But what is the disadvantage? The disadvantage is we have to learn multiple languages. Why do we have to learn multiple languages? Well, because in Android we are using Java and in iOS we are using Swift, right? So we need to know two languages over there. And then there is double the work for one app because we need to create an Android version of the application and an iOS version of the application. Both the applications usually is not going to be created by the same person because, well, an app developer for Android and an app developer for iOS usually will be different because everybody specializes in something or the other, right? I mean, unless you have a jack of all. So therefore need to create an two versions of the same application, which is I mean kind of not that much likable. And then we have to design and test and maintain everything twice. The development speed is comparatively slower. Why is the development speed slower? Because then it takes twice the amount of time and twice the amount of effort. That being said, obviously, if I mean, now this was all theoretical part. Now let me tell you the practicality of it. So as I said, the practicality of it is, in my experience, in my limited experience, as far as what I've seen in Intune, more often, I mean, 7 out of 10 times we will see that most of the applications that the end users are using, the LOB application, if they need to integrate the Intune SDK or MSAL into it, they would have written that application in either Android Studio or Xcode. In spite of these disadvantages. Why is it so? Because usually organizations don't have a lot of LOB application. And I mean, yeah, I know that they have to write two versions of that application, and they have to update the code each time a newer version is going to release. But then again, I mean, it is left, I mean, it is up to, I mean, it is a decision left up to the organization, right? And usually organizations don't update the newer, I mean, don't update new and bring out a newer version of their application that often. And if that is the case, then this is a one-time effort, right? I mean, maybe you outsourced this as an organization. You outsourced a developer and had him develop an APK and had them develop an IPA. You got the source code, you got the IP and APK, and then you are making use of it, right? So, I mean, what I'm trying to get at is, given the benefits that we get out of the first party native apps, that is using Android Studio and Xcode, what are the benefits? We have already spoken about the benefits, that the rich UI experience that we get, and the good support that we get, given that the tool is created by the creator of the operating system itself. This is one of the approaches that more often than not developers prefer. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the next section of application, that is progressive or responsive web apps. Now, let me just give you guys a disclaimer. This will probably not be used in Intune, or we will probably not be getting an application that we have to Intune SDK integrate or MSAL integrate, which was a progressive or a responsive web app. But still, it is a good to know information that this also exists. This classification also exists. So progressive and responsive web app is nothing. Think of this just like a website. Okay. So this is nothing. In this case, we don't exactly create an application. All we do is we create a web page which is responsive and looks like an application. What is the advantage of this? The advantage of this is we don't need to learn any new language for coding our app, because all we have to do is design our website. So if we already have a web designer who is very good with HTML or PHP, then this is something that he can, I mean, get accustomed with and create a responsive web app. And the other advantage is, this is that kind of application which we don't have to go and push and publish in the App Store. So we don't have to go to we don't need to have a MDM per se, or we don't need to have a Google developer account to upload our APK, or we don't need to go to the App Store and upload our IPA, right? Obviously, there are a lot of disadvantages to this as well. That being, these applications are not available in offline mode, as in the end user needs to be online and connected to the internet while using this application. And a very good example of this is, there's a responsive web app for Google Maps as well, right? So this is nothing but it is essentially a website that is running local. Think of it just like a website that is running locally on our device, and we have created a UI for our website, and it looks like an application. So it has an icon. We click on that icon, and the Google Map launches, and it looks and feels like the application is that there is an application which was inherently installed in the device, right? And the advantage of this is we might already have developers who are good in making websites, so we can leverage them in making the responsive web apps. The disadvantages, well, obviously the apps are not available offline. App store visibility is not there, and not all features are available. For example, if I'm using if I've developed an application using responsive web apps, there are a lot of things that my application will not have access to in the device, like for example the battery or the GPS or the camera or all these stuff. Inherently my application will not have access to these functionalities of the device. Okay. There are many tools that can be used to create the progressive responsive web apps, like we have Microsoft Blazor, we have Angular JS, we have Native Script, we have Icon. But more often than not, as an Intune admin, we won't have to deal with progressive or responsive web apps, because I mean this is just like a website, and more often than not, since this application in itself does not have enough privileges on the device, like the GPS, camera, vibration, all that stuff cannot be accessed by the application, and a few of those stuff will be needed by our app when we are Intune SDK integrating it. Therefore, this is something that this is something that we as an Intune admin will not have to deal with. Now let's talk about the third option, that is hybrid apps. So now hybrid apps is a very unique concept and an interesting concept. And the major advantage of an hybrid app is when we are coding using one of the platforms that the hybrid apps has to offer, we don't have to code twice. What I mean by that is, over here, if we have to create an application called X, I just coded once and I get the main code of that application. Now I can compile it for Android and get an APK if I wish to, or if I choose to do so, or I can compile it for iOS and get an IPA. Okay. A very good example of this is using Xamarin. So which we are going to do in the demo section. So in the demo, we will be seeing that we are going to use Xamarin form. We are just going to write the code for a basic app, and the same code is going to be utilized for the IPA, as well as the same code is going to be shared with the APK. Obviously, there's going to be a very minimal difference, and those differences cater to the fact that the operating system is different, but 90% of the code in both the cases is going to be the same. So that is an advantage of hybrid application toolkit that we use. It provides us the similar it provides us a code base which can be shared amongst both the operating system. So hybrid apps again can be divided into two parts. One is web view and one is cross platform. Cross platform means the application that we are using can be used for Android as well as can be used for iOS. Xamarin is one good example of that. We have Flutter as well nowadays, and then we have React Native. Okay, and for web view we have Apache Cordova. All right, so hybrid apps. So in hybrid apps, we are just going to concentrate about Xamarin and Xamarin first. So Xamarin is nothing but Xamarin is now an entity owned by Microsoft, and it's a Microsoft cross-platform native solution which is built on Visual Studio. So we'll be working on Xamarin by installing the Visual Studio, and we'll be using C# to write our program. So all we'll be doing is we'll be using C# to write a program in Visual Studio, and then we'll be compiling it and we'll be getting the native app. And we can use that native app in Android as well as in iOS. Okay, so one code, one language to work with, only one app that needs to be developed and created, but it can be used in Android, it can be used in iOS. Okay, so and the application that we get from here as well is native, meaning the application that we are going to get from Xamarin would look pretty much alike as the application that we would have got from Android Studio or Xcode. Like the icons and the look and feel would exactly be native. So it won't look like we have developed an application in some third-party tool and installing it into our device, right? So it gives you that native feel, right? Therefore, it is advantageous. And the only disadvantage that I can think of is the app is in a way, the app code might be a little longer than usual, and that is to do with the fact that it has to account for the operating system for which the application is going to cater. React Native and Flutter are other two cross-platform tools that we have, or framework that we have available. React Native is from Facebook and Flutter is from Google. Both are cross-platform, meaning if we write an application and if we write an app code using React Native, that is going to give us an IP and an APK version as well when we compile it, or if we choose to compile it, and the code is shareable, as in we won't have to develop and compile and maintain two different versions of that application. We won't have to code it twice, or we don't need to know two different programming languages to code it for two different operating systems. The same thing goes for Flutter as well. Okay, so I hope that until now we have got an understanding of what this diagram is all about. At least from an Intune admin perspective, we have got an understanding of what this diagram is all about, and what is first party native app, what is progressive app, and what is hybrid application. So in a lot of the cases you will see that a lot of programmers are going now with the hybrid approach. Why are they going with the hybrid approach like Xamarin and Flutter? Well, they are going with the hybrid approach because, well, they don't have to manage two applications, right? They just write the code in one place, compile it, develop it, test it, they are done with it, right? I mean, they don't have to develop a newer application each time. However, there are many cases wherein they go with Android Studio and Xcode as well, right? Given that they don't have that many applications to support and they want to do it right. So making the right choice. So what is it that the app developer has to do to make sure that he's choosing the right one? If you want to develop and build an authentic native app, and if you don't have a lot of applications, and as I said, 7 out of 10 times this is what the organization will be choosing, they used to go with Android Studio and Xcode. And any application developed in Android Studio and Xcode, we have the option of integrating it with Intune SDK and MSAL if we wish to do so. And if we want to stick with web design, as in if we don't have an app developer and if we don't want to learn a new language, we are inherently web designers, but we want to expand into the mobile application world as well. And then one of the options that we have is making use of responsive web pages using the options that we discussed earlier. This is not exactly an application, cannot be Intune SDK or MSAL integrated, does not have access to a lot of features in the device, but definitely an option by which an application can be created. And again, I mean, we have the hybrid approach as well. If we want to save the cost of maintaining two applications individually and work with just one programming language, then we can use the hybrid platform like Cordova, Xamarin, Flutter, React Native, and all this stuff. Okay. All right. So enough of theory said. Now we are going to talk about how we can do app development using Android Studio. So I'm not going to show you guys a lot of screenshot, and I'm not going to show you guys the theoretical stuff. It will rather be more productive if we start doing the practical and take a look over the demo right away, which is going to answer a lot of questions for us. So let's get right to it, and we are going to install Android Studio and start developing our very own first Android APK. Okay, so now I'm in my virtual machine and we are going to install the Android Studio here. So it's like fairly straightforward. All we have to do is go to Google and then type in download Android Studio. The first link that comes up, that is from developer.android.com. We are going to click on that. And we are going to click on download Android Studio. Okay, so it's going to download the installer for us. I already have downloaded the installer. I'm just going to right click and run it as an administrator. It's a pretty straightforward installation, nothing much to be done. The good thing here is, as a part of the installation, we are going to see that the Android Studio installs the emulator as well. So the advantage of having an emulator is we don't have to, I mean, every time we are testing our application, we don't have to extract the APK and then install it on a physical device. Over here, you can see as well, it's installing the Android virtual device or the emulator. On the right hand side, you can see that this is recommended, but not compulsory. So I'm going to install the Android emulator because we are going to make use of it, right? So I'm just going to click on next, 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 and then finish. It's asking us for the location. I'll accept the default and then install. So it will just take a less than a minute. And once the installation is done, then there is there is almost no configuration that is needed. And we will see how it goes. So let's wait for the installation to finish here. Okay, so over here we see installation is complete. I'm going to click on next and then click on, it's going to by default start the Android Studio for us. So this is the Android Studio that is launching. It's asking us whether we want to do a config, or I mean if we have any configuration that we want to import. I don't have any, so I'm going to click on do not import and I'm going to click on next. So at this point of time, Android Studio might install the relevant files it might need at the backend. Over there, you see there was a progress bar. And then over here, it's asking whether we want to send usage to Google or not. I don't really care about it. And then over here, it says, welcome. This wizard will set up the development environment for Android Studio. And there is no selection to be made here. It's just a prompt. I'm going to click on next. Over here, it's asking us what kind of Android, I mean, whether you want to go ahead with the standard setting or customized setting. I have gone through both. There is not much to choose there. I'm just going to go with the standard setting. Over here, it's asking us what kind of background you want. I'm going to go with Darkula. Looks better. And then there is a whole bunch of things that it is going to install and download. It's going to download the Android SDKs. There is a lot of APIs that it is going to download, right? So I am just going to click on finish. Now this might take around 3 to 4 minutes, and we are just going to make sure. So the device is reaching out to all the Google endpoints. So we will make sure that it's able to reach out successfully. One more, I mean, there are a couple of errors that you might see as well. There is one thing that we might need to keep in mind is if we are running this on a virtual machine, like I am in this case, then we might have issues with the installation of the emulator. So that is fine. I have a physical machine as well, so we can switch over there if we have to make use of the emulator. So we'll just wait for this to finish for now. Okay, so there you go. Whatever was supposed to happen has happened. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and over here you see that one thing that did not happen was the installation of Hexam. Now that is absolutely fine. We are not able to install Hexam because nested virtualization is not enabled, and Hexam is for I mean, we wouldn't have got this in error if we were doing this on a physical machine. Given that we are doing this on a virtual machine, it is giving us this error. But that is absolutely fine. Our Android Studio will work absolutely fine. So I'm just going to click on finish, and this is the first page that comes up. So now we have an option of creating a new project. So every time we are creating an application, we have to treat it as a project, right? Creating an application is equivalent to creating a new project. Now we have an option of creating a new project, or if we already had, let's say that there was another machine, I made a project over there. Now I want to import that project over here. So I have an option of opening an existing project. If I click on that, I can browse to a specific location and then open a project from there. However, we are going to create our very own first project. So I'm going to click on first project. Now there are a whole bunch of options that come up. On the left hand side, it is showing us that, okay, you want to make a project, that is, you want to make an application, but for what? You can make an Android application for phone or tablet, or you can make it for your watch, or you can make it for Android TV or for, let's say, your car or stuff like that, right? So it's giving us a lot of options. And then if I go to Wear OS, then you see that it's at the it's looking like a dial, right? In a dial in a watch. That is how the layout is going to be and stuff. So I'm going to stick with phone and tablets, and we will talk about all these layouts later on. For now, let me just click on no activity and then do a next. Okay. Over here, it's telling us to name our project or name our application. So let me just call this Java class. And over here, you see something called a package name. This is the package name. This is going to be the package name of our application or the bundle ID of our application. Now, this needs to be unique, because when we later on upload this application to Google Play Store, then a check is going to be made to make sure that this is unique. Okay, it's telling us where our project is going to be saved, which is by default inside the Android Studio projects folder. Now it's asking us the language, what language we want to use in order to do the coding of our application. I am going to go with Java, but then we have an option of selecting Kotlin as well. Okay, then it's asking us the minimum SDK. I am going to leave it to default, that is 4.1. Okay, and then I'm going to click on finish. The moment I click on finish, you see that a lot of stuff happens. And what is happening right now? Right now, my project or my application is being built. Now you might ask that what application is being built. I mean, we have to make our application, right? Yes, that is true. We have to make our application, but before we can start the actual coding, all the libraries that are needed and all the Gradle build that is needed is going to be built by the Android Studio. So for now, we just have to wait for maybe a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes. At the bottom, you see that there is a scroll bar which is saying that indexing JDK. So I'm just going to wait for this to finish. And once this has finished, then I will give you a tour of the Android Studio, and then we will play along with it. Okay. Okay, there you go. So now I see that the build at the bottom, I can see that there are no error messages. All the build is successful. Everything is done, right? So this is where the default landing page is going to be for my Android Studio. Now on the left hand side, I can see that there is a bunch of information. There are a bunch of folders. There are a bunch of views. We are going to talk all about that later on. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, so think of this as a folder structure. I'm going to expand the apps, which is in this case the app is referring to my application, and then under manifest there is a file called Android manifest. This is one of the important files. We are going to talk about this later on. Right now I'm just giving you a tour. Okay, and then there is a folder called Java. Inside Java, there is, I named it Learn Java, therefore it is showing me Learn Java over here. And this is the bundle ID of my application. Okay, eai.com.learnjava. And then we have the rest folder. Inside rest folder, we have a whole bunch of other folders as well. I'm just expanding all of that. And then at the bottom, we have something called Gradle script, okay, which builds the Gradle for us. So before so when we go to a gym, before we start working out, we do a little bit of warm up, right? So before I start the actual coding and give you a tour, I want to do a warm up first. So what I'm going to do is just give you a brief refresher of your Java days if you studied it in your school or in college. So I'm just going to click on, this is my application. We just need to ignore these two. So inside Java, you see that there are three folders, right? One is ei.com.learnjava, and then there are two others. The other two are used for testing purposes. So we are just going to ignore the other two. The one that is relevant over here is the first one. Okay. So I'm just going to expand that. There is nothing inside of it right now. So I'm just going to right click and do a new and a Java class. Okay. Let me just call this hello and then enter. So right now what happened was I just created a class with the name hello. Okay. And on the right hand side, you see that it has, this is the bundle ID. This is the package, and you see that it has by default created a public class with the name hello. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on enter, and I am going to do psvm enter. So and then let me do something like this. What is this going to do? This is not going to do nothing but just going to print out the line hello everything about Intune. How do I run this? I right click on this and do a run hello.main. The first time, so whenever I do this, at the bottom you can see it says that Gradle build running. It's going to build Gradle is going to build the project, and then at the bottom you see it displayed hello everything about Intune. Now let's see what is this. So if you guys remember, we used to do something like this in our old school Java days, right? So right now what's happening is there is a class created with the name hello, and this class contains a method. The name of the method is main. Okay. So there is a, it says that public static void main. There is a public class with the name hello. It's public, which means it can be referenced by other classes and uh, other packages as well. And this hello class is referencing a method called main. Okay. This main method in turn is, so the system.out.println, this is a standard line that we use to print anything on the screen, right? How does it work? It actually, system over here is actually a class again, and this system class contains an object called out, and this out object is referencing a method called println, and anything that we provide inside the parenthesis is the argument for that method. So right now we are calling the method println. Println is nothing but a method that is used to print anything on the screen. And what is the argument that we are providing? We are providing hello everything about Intune. So what I'm trying to say is this is like just old Java school days. If we have to print anything, this is what we would do. And then all those logic are applicable over here as well. So I'm just going to be very quick with it without wasting any time before we start the actual coding. So let's say that I do int. We can declare all the integers, variables, do concatenation, encapsulation, all those logics apply over here. So let's say that I do int a is equal to 5, comma, b is equal to 10, and then c, and then semicolon. Okay, and then I do c is equal to a, sorry, c is equal to a plus b, and then I do a system.out.println, and then the sum of the numbers is equal to plus c, right? So what is going to be the output? The output is going to be 10 plus 5, that is 15. And then obviously it's going to display hello everything about Intune as well, right? That is what we get over here. Very basic stuff, nothing much to see over here. And then let's say that, I mean, all your if structure and you can use all kind of loops that you want to, like for loop, while loop, do while loop, if statement and all that stuff, right? So if I do something like while a is greater than 0, I am going to do system.out.println the value of a and then a minus minus. Okay. So what is this going to do? Value of a is 5, right? So is this condition true or false? Is 5 greater than 0? Yes, 5 is greater than 0. What are we going to print? We are going to print 5. And then we are going to decrease 5 by 1. So this is going to be 4. So then again 4 is going to be displayed, and then 3, then 2, then 1, right? So it's just going to display the same numbers. So so see over here, it say that hello everything about Intune, the sum of the numbers is this, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the intent of this is just letting you guys know that all the logic from over Java days is going to work. We can define a public class, we can define a private class, we can call any method the way we want to, and whenever we are calling a method, anything that we provide inside the parentheses is going to be the argument for that method. We can do any kind of integer concatenation, or we can do any addition, subtraction, so printing, whatever we want to do. Each line should be ending with a semicolon, and we can use any kind of loop as well. So be that be while, for, do while, any kind of loop, as well as if we want to make use of if else statement, all of those stand true. Okay. Okay, and this is just a screenshot explaining what is what, right? So if I go to the Android Studio, this is what I see, right? So let me just do a comparison of what I see over here with this screenshot. I'll probably include this in the blog that I'll be writing. So on the left hand side inside manifest, we see something called Android manifest file, right? If I go inside the manifest file, I see the bundle ID. Right now, don't think about all of these, that what all these are. Right now, we are just going to concentrate on the bundle ID or the package ID over here. So the Android manifest file contains the application's bundle IDs as well as its permission. So this application might have permission to your contacts. This application might have permissions to your phone's phone book or stuff like that, right? So all the permissions that this application is going to have, we are going to define inside the manifest file as well as the bundle ID. Now inside this folder, inside I said that there were 3 folders, right? One is the normal one and the other 2 are tests. So we are just going to ignore the other 2. Inside the main folder, there is going to be a class called main activity, right? This main activity contains the application's working code. Okay, so right now over here, if I go inside this and if I double click on hello, right now there was nothing, there is nothing much, right? Apart from what we have put in over here. So when we started it, right, before we started it, it did not contain all these lines, right? It just contained public class hello, nothing else. This was just some Java thing that I was telling you. But whatever we code over here is going to be the code of the application. So if we want our application to play a video, this is wherein we are going to write the code inside Java over here. Okay. What else do we have? It is by default called the main activity. Okay. What else do we have? Inside the res folder, inside drawable, we have an option of uploading images. So over here, if I go into res and then drawable, I have an option of uploading images over here. And any image that we want to use in our application needs to be uploaded over here. Like for example, let's say that I have an application called Facebook, right? So in Facebook, there are a lot of images that are used, right? A lot of images that are displayed. So all those images that I want to inculcate into my code needs to be uploaded over here. And then I have something called MIP map. This MIP map contains the launch icon of our application. So once I go into the Android device, there is going to be a launch icon for this application that we are developing, right? So this launch icon is present over here. By default, Android Studio provides us with this launch icon for all the images, like at all the sizes. But we might want a custom obviously if I'm making an application called WhatsApp, I won't be using this logo, right? I will be having my own customized logo. So inside this map folder is where that resides. Okay, so now we know what is this drawable and what is this map folder for, right? Contains the application's launch icons. And then inside layout, there is this activity underscore main.xml. So this inside this layout, this activity underscore main.xml, it actually contains how our application is going to look. Okay, what I mean by that is, when we launch our application for the very first time, there are a lot of buttons in our application, right? Let's say that I'm making a calculator, which we are going to do very shortly. So that calculator is going to contain many buttons, many images, and all that stuff. Well, obviously I have uploaded those images into the mip map, or not into the mip map, into the drawable, but then I have to tell our application code where that image is going to be placed on the screen, right? So all that part is done by the activity, is done in the activity underscore main.xml. Okay, and at the bottom we have these two gradles. These two gradle files are responsible for building our application. So whenever we run anything, the Gradle builds the application and then it displays whatever is going on. Okay. Other than that, this is, I mean, right now we are doing a hello world, therefore it's not showing anything. Otherwise, this is the, if we click over, you can over here see that there is an device called Pixel. Now, I don't have any Google Pixel attached to this device. The only reason it's showing it over here is because there was an emulator that was created, because this is a physical machine. So once I installed the Android Studio, there was a Google Pixel emulator that was created over here, right? And I have an option of creating multiple emulators and changing it as well. Okay. So this was a small tour so of our and a small refresher of our Java days. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to close this project and I'm going to create a new project, and this time we are going to create a proper application. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to click on new project now, but before I do that, it shows my older projects on the left hand pane as well. So I can choose to open an existing project from there as well. So I'm going to click on create a new project. This time I am going to click on empty activity, and then we will see the difference. So let me now take this opportunity in explaining what does these activities mean, right? Okay, so now think of two applications. First is WhatsApp and second is Facebook. Okay. When we launch the WhatsApp application, there are three tabs that we can see, right? Once we are at the chats. One is chats, the second is calls, and the third is history or something like that, right? So three tabs are over there. When we launch Facebook, we don't see those three tabs. We have a different kind of menu. When we launch any other application, let's say Zomato, then there are different kind of tiles that come up over there, right? So this is what this template is for. I have two options. Either I can choose an empty activity and then create those options in my project. I mean, depending upon how I want my application to look like, or I can use this template and whatever relevant codes are needed to be added to my application with respect to that layout, it will be done for us by the Android Studio. Okay, so it will save us some trouble. So over here we see there are so many different activities over here. You see there's master and detailed flow, right? And like you click on something over here on the right hand side, more description on it comes up. Then you click on something over here, more description comes up. Then we have the navigation drawer activity. This is a different kind of activity which we see in Play Store, I guess. Then we have scrolling activity, and then we have let's scroll down tabbed activity. So this is how we have in case of WhatsApp, right? We go into a WhatsApp chats, and then over here we have the status, we have calls, and we have one more thing over here, and at the top we have menu, right? So all these have different layouts, and then we have something called a login activity, wherein you have to enter the username and password and then click on sign in. And then we have something called empty activity, and in empty activity you see nothing is there. This one has a base activity. So base activity has an icon over here and a menu over here. So I can either choose this if I want this kind of layout in my application, or I can choose this if I don't want any kind of layout, or I can choose this if I want any kind of layout and then add the functionality for this and anything else that we wish to choose. So I'm going to click on empty activity and then click on next. Obviously it's going to ask me for the name of an application. So let me just call this demo calculator. This was called demo cal, and the package name or the bundle ID by itself it's chose as eai.com.democal. This should be this should not be redundant, or this should be unique. And then the save location is fine, language is Java, and the minimum SDK is 26. That's fine. It says that the app will run on approximately 60% of devices out there. It is absolutely fine. I mean, the device that I'm going to test on runs with Android 8 or later, so that is absolutely fine. If I want to change it, I can change it from here as well. And as you see, if I decrease it, the percentage of devices increases, right? So I'm fine with going with Oreo. And then I'm going to click on finish. Once I click on finish, you can see at the bottom the Gradle is building, and it by default is going to create an class for us. It has again created a class for us. The class is called main activity, and it is a public class. And then we see something called extends app compat. So extend app compat is for extending you can think of it in this way, that this is going to extend the functionality of our application. Okay, and then there is this one method that is created called onCreate, right? Now I'm just going to scroll this to the right and show you the other things. So this is the package name, that is ei.com.demolocal. I think I misspelled it. It's called demo. Okay, sorry, it's not demo local, it is demo cal, because we are obviously going to make a calculator. These two, as I said, these are for testing. We can just ignore them. Inside the manifest, there is a manifest file. The manifest file also contains the name of our application, and over here you can see it says demo cal, and then it contains the package name, and then it contains the default permissions that are in there, right? Other than that, if I go inside res and then layout, this is the layout file which determines how exactly the layout of my application is going to look like. And this is a preview. This is where we are going to work on right now. But before I do that, let me just show you the map folder. It by default contains the launch icons and the Gradle. Okay. All right. So before I do anything, let me just show you what exactly the main activity is containing. The main activity is not containing anything right now, correct? Okay, now I am going to go into the layout, and this is what my layout is looking like. Okay, so we chose empty activity, therefore there are no menus by default. There is nothing by default, right? The only thing there is a text view which says hello world. If I want to change this, I can click on it as well. I can click on attributes and it gives me more options. I can scroll down, go to the text, and over here I'm going to type everything about Intune. Okay. Until now we have not made anything in our application, right? But would you believe me if I said that we have an application ready? Should I prove it to you? Okay, let me just do that. So I did not do anything. We just created a layout. I just gave you a trip around the Android Studio and the different compartments. I just changed this from hello world to everything about Intune. What I'm going to do now is I am going to click over here, which is going to run this application. Run it where? Run it on the default emulator, which is Google Pixel. If I want, I can go to the AVD manager and create additional emulators as well. So before I run it, let me just show you guys the AVD manager also once again. So if I click on AVD manager over here, it is showing two devices by default, or it might show one. If I want to create additional, I just have to click on create virtual device, and then there are a lot of devices or images to choose from. The one that have the Play Store icon have the Play Store as well. So you just have to click on a device, and then next you have to click an image. So if you want to run it with Android Pie, that is already downloaded. If you want the latest one, you just have to download it and then click on Pie, and then next finish. It will create an image for you. Right now I have a Nexus and as well as a Pixel. Okay, all right. So coming back to my application again, this is not an application per se. There's nothing that we have done except writing everything about Intune, but I'm just going to click on play over here. It's going to launch the application for me, and here you see this is my Nexus device. It's launching this. Let me just close it and show it again just in case we didn't see it. Just going to click on stop and then play again. It launches the application, everything about Intune, right? There is nothing that we have done. There are no buttons, no layout. But what I'm trying to say is this is an application. So if I choose, I can get the .apk from the Android Studio, publish it to, if I want, I can publish this to the managed play or to the public store as well, to the Play Store. And if I have a Google developer account, and then deploy it to the different users. Well, although this application is not going to do much, but what I'm trying to say is our application is ready, and this is how simple it is for me to make an application. So right now, because the Android Studio already made the layout for me, over here you see that this is the layout. If I go into the code, it is going to tell us the code of that was generated behind this layout. So this code is dependent upon the initial activity that we selected. So we selected empty activity, right? Over there, if we had selected any different kind of activity, then the code over here would have changed. So let's take a look over here. It is having and layout width match parent, layout height match parent, and it's using the main activity, which is over here. And then the width and the height is set to wrap content, and the text over here is everything about Intune. I can just change this to so we were able, let me just do it first and then I'll show you. Let me just change this to EAI, and then everything else is by default. Over here there are a lot of tabs. One is the code, which shows me the code for the layout. If I go into the design, it shows me the design. So I can just click on this and then change the content, or I can go to the code and then I can change the content over here that I wish to display. Okay, all right, fair enough. So until now we have seen the default and how easy it is for us to make a normal application. Now what is our intent? Our intent is making a calculator. Okay, that is what we are going to do. I am going to delete this first, and then we are going to start with our calculator. So all right, so what does a calculator look like? A calculator has a image, right? So obviously the first thing that I need is an image. So I have an image over here. What I'm going to do, it looks like somewhat like a calculator. I'm just going to copy it, and then I am going to click on, so we are going to go into the drawable and then paste the image over here. So I'm going to right click, paste, okay, and then refactor. So now the image is over here, right? So the first thing that I want to do is paste an image. So what I'm going to do, I am going to go to text, I'm going to go to common and then image view, and then paste an image over here. It's asking us what kind of image. I already have this image calculator.png in my Android Studio. I can just click on this and then do a OK. What does this do? This puts an image right in front of the screen. Okay, you can change the size and layout and all that stuff the way you want to. Let me just resize this a little and place this in the middle of the screen. Okay, so now I have a calculator icon. What else do I need? I need a place where people can enter number, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on texts, and then I'm going to click on number, and then I'm going to add the option to enter number, right? I'm just going to place it at the bottom, if only it lets me. And then the user is going to enter two numbers, right? Not just one number. So I've entered two numbers over here. Okay. And then I'm going to display the result, right? So he has to enter number 1, and then he has to enter number 2, and then I have to display the result. So for the result, I am going to click on text view. This is wherein the result is going to be displayed. Okay. All right. So let me see how does this look as of now. This is wherein I can enter the number. See, I have an option of entering the number over here, and then I have an option of entering the number over here as well, right? And then the output is supposed to be displayed over here. I know as of now the calculator does not look that pretty. We are going to work on making this look pretty, but I mean, the intent is showing you guys how easy it is to make a normal application as well as the coding behind it, right? So until now we have placed everything on the screen, right? Now what we have to do is, there is something called an ID for each of these. I'll show you where. So if I click on edit text number, this is the first number that the end user is going to enter, right? So I am going to call this num1. Okay. And over here, I am going in the hint type, I'm going to write, I'm going to do a refactor here, and then over here I'm going to write enter the first number and then enter. Okay. And then in the, this was the num1. The second one, so by default you see both of them have a ID, right? What is the significance of this ID? We will talk about that later on, but I want these IDs to be meaningful. So the first one was num1. I'm going to call this num2, and I'm going to scroll down, and then I am in the hint, I'm going to type in, just do a refactor here, and then in the hint just type in enter the second number, right? Okay. But then calculator is not just about entering the two numbers and showing the text view, right? I have to enter the operation that I want to do, right? The calculator is going to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to buttons, and then I am going to add 4 buttons over here. Okay, so this is the first button, this is the second button, this is the third button, and this is the fourth button. Okay, so I've added 4 buttons over here. Each button is going to do a specific operation. What is the first button? The first button is BTN ADD. Okay, everything, I'm keeping everything in small, but I mean, the recommended way is using camel case, that is, it would be something like BTT ADD. Sorry, it would be something like BTT ADD. This is the right way of doing it. And then it will ask us to refactor. I'm going to do refactor, and in the text I'm going to enter plus, right? Now what does this happen? If I click on this button again, the name, the ID of the button is button add. The ID now makes sense, and this is what we are displaying in the button. Similarly, for the second one, I'm going to make this BTT SUB, that is button for subtraction. and then in the text I am just going to put in a minus. Okay, and then the same thing for button multiplication. So bttmul and refactor over here, and then in the text I am just going to put in the multiplication sign, and in the button division I'm going to put in btt div, and over here refactor again, and then I'm just going to put in a slash. Okay. Okay, all right, so we are good. So until now, I know that this does not look like the best calculator you have ever seen, but more or less this is, and the intent is not making or developing any high-end application. The intent is showing you guys how this really works, right? And then again, sky is the limit. So over here, we have made we have added the 4 icons over here. Now let me do this. Again, there are many ways of making this look prettier. But before I do any of that, what I'm going to do, I am going to run this again and see what has changed. So I launch this. Now my application will launch again. And then you see the only thing over here is our buttons are going out of the picture, right? So that is something that we will have to fix. So let me just move all of this to the top, because we will have to make space for this, right? Okay, now let me just run it again and see what does it show. Okay, it is showing us the the place to enter both the numbers. The first number can be entered, the second number can be entered, and the text view over here. This says text view right now. Over here, we are going to display the sum of the number is, or the result is, something like that. Okay. All right. So this looks fine. I think I think the only thing that can be taken care of is probably moving. Okay, this looks fine. And again, I have no intentions of changing the color or whatsoever, because we can play along that line as much as we want to, right? So until now, our layout is ready. This is how the front end of our application is going to look like. Now we are going to write the code for this application. So where do we write the code of this application? Again, we are at the layout main activity.main, activity underscore main, but we write the code of the application under Java main activity. So I'm going to double click on that, and the main activity opens up over here, and we will now be writing the code. Okay, so let's start with writing the code. So whatever code we write, it's going to be obviously inside our class. So our class is main activity. Inside our class, we are going to write our code. So I'm making some space over here. Usually the first thing that we do in our application is make the declaration. So let me start making the declaration. So what do we have in our application? We have 4 buttons and 3 input, 2 input, 1 output, right? We have 4 buttons. Let me just go back into the layout. We have 4 buttons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 input and 1 output. Okay. So we need to create a handler for all of that. So for the button, we are going to create a handler by saying button, and then let me just make a button for add subtract. So let me just call this sub, and then divide, and then multiply. Okay, right now I have not used any of these buttons, therefore it is all grayed out. Okay, what else do I need? Well, the buttons are there, but there are 2 input that I need, right? The 2 input for the 2 numbers. So those are edit text. So I am going to do a edit text, and then let me just call this val1 and then val2. Okay, and then I am going to, there is a third value which is going to display the text, right? That is text view. So let me just call this text view, and then this is case sensitive, so I have to make sure that I am yes, and then text view followed by, let me just call this val1 val2 and then val result. Okay, so right now you see that edit text is showing in red, button is showing in red, but text value is not showing in red. This is because these are actually not, we are not declaring a variable, right? So I have to import the class for edit text as well. So I just have to hover over here and click on import class, and over here you see that import.android widget.edit text is done. Similarly, I have to do the same thing for buttons as well. So right now what we have done is we have declared three values, value1, value2, and then value res, that is the result, and then the button for addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. Okay, so now there are two things that we have to do. First is, what is going to be the value 1? Value 1 is going to be whatever the end user enters over here, right? That is going to be the value 1. What is going to be the value 2? Value 2 is whatever the end user enters here. And what is going to be the value res? Value res is whatever we are going to display here. So we will have to associate value 1 with this. When I say this, what is this? What is the first number? The ID is num1. You remember I was talking about the ID. So when we were entering, when we were setting this up, each of these has its own ID, right? So the ID for this is num1, which we have set predefined. The value for this is num2, and the value for this is, well, this is still text view. Let me just call this num3, num3, and then refractor. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, over here we, in the main activity, we have value 1, value 2, value res. Value 1 corresponds to the value that we have in num1, right? So we have to make that correspondence over here under the override function. So what I'm going to do is, this is the command that we have to use. So what I'm going to say, I'm going to say that what is value 1? Val1 is equal to, there is something called find view by ID. See, if I just write find, Android Studio is smart enough and it start giving me, and it will start to give me hint. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to say that value 1 is whatever there is in num1. Okay, so what is the syntax for saying that? The syntax is find view by ID. If I just press an enter, it populates. What is the ID? The ID is r dot id dot num1. Now, why am I writing r.id.num1? I'm writing r dot. So this r actually corresponds to the res folder. Okay. So where is this num1 present? This num1 is present in activity.main, right? Where is this activity.main present? This activity.main is present inside res folder, right? So what I'm saying is val1 is equal to whatever there is in num1. Now where is num1? Num1 is inside res. Inside res, the ID is num1, right? So let me just rephrase. So val1 is equal to num1 because this is num1. Now where is this num1? The num1 is inside r dot. When I'm saying r dot, what it means is inside this res folder. So inside the res folder, the ID is num1. So this is what this this verbiage is indicating. Now similarly, what is val2? Val2 is equal to, again we'll do the same thing, find view by id. We have to make sure that this is case sensitive, therefore we have to be very careful over here. And over here we will use r dot id dot, over here we are going to use num2. Okay. And then what is val3? The same thing over here for val3 as well, right? Find view by id, val3, or not val3, this is valres is equal to find view by id we have to be r dot id dot num3, r dot id dot num3. Okay. All right. So now we have made those associations. So this was the first thing that we had to do. Whatever is entered in num1, that is going to be mapped with val1. Whatever is entered in num2, that is mapped with val2, and then valres. Now the second thing that we have to do is set something called on-click listener. Now let's understand what does this on-click listener mean. So over here we have got, let me just go back to the main activity.xml. There is just one concept here that we have to understand. Every time we are clicking on the button, something is supposed to happen, right? So let me just click on the run again. Let me just launch this. The application has launched. If I do enter the first number 2, if I enter the second number 2, and then if I do a 2 plus 2, it is supposed to show 4 over here, right? But why will it show 4? Because this button is supposed to add these two numbers. So we have to activate this button. So to activate this button, we use a method called on-click listener. What this means is our operating system is just going to wait and watch. Anytime somebody clicks on this button, that is when our operating system is going to listen to it and then take the necessary action. So what I'm trying to say is, long story short, if we have got any button in our application, each button is supposed to be associated with a function called on-click listener. And that on-click listener function has just one activity to do, that is just wait and watch. And anytime somebody presses that button, it is going to listen to that and then take an appropriate action. Okay, so that is what we are going to do over here. So I'm going to go back into my main activity, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to add an on-click listener. Okay. So before I add the on-click listener, right now we have selected val1, val2, val3. But what about this buttons? What is going to be the add button? This add button is going to do this add button is going to get inputs from where? This add button is going to get the input from here, right? This. And what is the ID for this? It's btt add. Similarly, the subtract is going to get value from this button. So similarly, we have to set the same thing for the buttons as well. So what I'm going to do here is add is equal to find view by ID, and then r.id dot, over here we are going to use the button add. Okay. Similarly, we have to do the same thing for subtract. Subtract is equal to find view by ID, and then r.id dot subtract. Over here we are using BTT's SUB. This is the ID that we have defined in our XML. So if I go into the layout, this is BTT SUB, right? So we have to make sure we are doing this correctly. And then the same thing for multiply, and then the same thing for divide, right? Sorry. First, let me just do this. Find view by ID, r.id.btt. This is button multiply and then button divide. So MUL, and then we had, so as you can see over here, ADD, SUB and MUL, they are not grayed out anymore because we have now used these variables, if you would call it, though they are not exactly variables. Now if I do a div is equal to, now you see this is also not grayed out. So div is equal to find view by ID, r.id. Now we have this button division. Okay, all right. So now we have made association for all of these. Now the next task is, as I said, setting up the on-click listener. Okay, so now we are going to set the on-click listener. What the on-click listener means is anytime anybody is clicking on any button, what activity we want to perform. So there are only 4 buttons, so there will be 4 on-click listener. So we are going to set the on-click listener now. Okay, so the command for on-click listener, I won't really say that it is complicated, but I mean there are a couple of lines to it. So we are going to do it very carefully. And again, we have to set on-click listener for 4 buttons, right? That is for add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So what is going to be the command? The command is going to be add dot set on-click listener. So let me just type set on click, and whenever I do that, you see the first option that is coming over here, it has auto populated. So I'm just going to click on enter, and then it fills in. And then I am going to do a new space view dot on click listener. And when before even typing view dot on click listener, you see the second option over here, right? So I'm just going to click on that. So see, I just had to type add dot set on, and then it was autocomplete, just it like it would in case of PowerShell, right? Just pressing on tabs. So over here also, I just click on enter, and then you see there are a couple of lines that got added automatically. So this is actually the command to set on click listener to a specific button. Over here, we are setting it to the button called add. And what is add? Add is whatever we are getting from this button add. And what is this button add? If I go into activity.main, this is button add, right? Over here you see button add. So it's all related to each other, right? Going back into the main activity. So this is what got created automatically when I was doing a set on click listener. Now what I'm going to do, I am just going to do a little bit of Java over here. We have already seen how it was. Let me just make some space in the screen. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I am going to do int a comma b comma c. Okay, I've taken 3 numbers. A is what? Or instead of doing ABC, let me just do num1 comma num2 comma num3. Okay, it makes more sense if we are using some correct values, right? So num1 is equal to, num1 is the first number. Okay, so whatever number, so num1 is equal to val1. Okay, but we cannot just type in num1 is equal to val1. We have to do it in a specific, I mean the syntax has to be specific. So the syntax over here is, the syntax that we have to use is integer. So let me just type in int integer, and you will see that it's going to auto populate as well. So integer dot parse, I'm just trying to see if it auto populates or not. Therefore, I'm typing very slowly. You don't have to type in so slowly in each of the case. And then in the bracket, I am just going to put in the first value, that is val1, val1 dot get text, text, and then dot to string. I'm going to explain all of this, but right now just see the toString did come, so that's why I was writing it very slowly, just to make sure whether it, how much of this comes or not. So num1 came. Now num2 is equal to, I'm going to copy the entire line again, integer.parse int, and over here the value is not val1, over here it's val2. Okay, and then what is going to be num3? Num3 is equal to num1 plus num2. Okay, and then we are just going to set the final value. So over here we have got num1, num2, num3. Num3 is equal to this, and then we are going to set the value for val.res. So we are going to do a val res dot set text, and what are we going to set it with? We are going to set it with the result is, and then plus, over here we can put in the result, which is num3. Okay, now let me just explain what the hell just happened over here. Everything was fine and good until I started writing in 5 or 6 lines of code very slowly, which made no sense at all. So over here it was nothing complicated. Val1 is what? Val1 is num1. What is num1? Num1 is the ID of whatever we are entering over here. Same thing for val2, val3, and same thing for the buttons. And now over here, what we are doing is we are setting the on-click listener for the addition button, for the plus button. Okay, so we did add.set on-click listener, and it creates this function for us. And inside this function, we are going to do whatever we want this add button to do. So what do we want this add button to do? Eventually we want the add button to add 2 numbers. Okay, so therefore what we did was we took 2 numbers and then we added it. Okay, but then what is this first number? The first number is whatever the user is entering for val1, right? That is the first number. What is the second number? Second number is whatever the user is entering for val2. And what is the third number? Third number is whatever we achieve by adding these two. Therefore we are not doing therefore over here we are not doing num3 is equal to integer.parse int, because we are setting the value over here. In this and this, what we are doing is we are receiving the value. So num1 is equal to, in a way, what val1 is, but this is the syntax because we have to convert it into string first and then convert it into integer. This is the way it is supposed to be in Java. So num1 is equal to val1, then num2 is equal to val2. So now we have values assigned to num1 and num2. I'm going to add both of them, and now I get num3. Now I am going to put this value in valres. Okay, so how do we do that? I cannot do valres is equal to num3. The syntax for that is I have to set the value for val3. Okay, val3. So what I do is val.res and then set text and then num3 over here. Okay, so this is how set on click listener works first, and this has to be done obviously for all the buttons, right? So what I am doing over here is I am just going to copy this, and then I am going to do the same thing again, paste it over here. Okay, I'm going to do a set on click listener, And then over here, what I'm going to do, I am not going to do a add. So I have done a on-click listener to the add button, but now I have to set a on-click listener for all the buttons, right? So now I'm going to do a set on-click listener for sub. Okay, so now I've done a sub on-click listener, and it's again going to take two values. Num1 is this, num2 is this. All it's going to do, it's going to subtract. Okay, we have now set a on-click listener for subtraction as well. So now I am going to do the same thing for multiplication and division. So this is the opening, this is the opening, this is the closing, and then this is the closing. Okay, and now let me do the same thing for multiplication. MUL, because over here we have named it as mul, and then we will do the same thing for division as well. So over here, if I go down, multiplication over here, instead of just multiplying two numbers, I'm going to, because the value 1 and value 2 is going to be the same, right? Therefore the numbers, I mean, either this one is going to be operated or this one is going to be operated, but both will not be operated at the same point of time, right? So we are all good here. And then I'm going to enter the last one, that is for division, on click listener for division. Okay, and then this divided by this. So let me just put in the, okay, looks all good. Okay, so there were just a few errors and semicolons missing. So the only thing that we have to take care of is, well, as we know in Java, all the lines should end with a semicolon, right? So we have to make sure that the lines are ending with semicolon. And whenever this, so this is the start of the on-click listener function, right? So this on-click listener function is opening up, it's closing up, and it has to end with this. Before semicolon, we have to put in this. So whenever we are opening any code, we have to close that code, and we have to make sure that the indentation is followed. And over here in this case, you will see that it's very, very easy, right? I mean, it's showing us these lines as well, which shows that which line is, I mean, which bracket you have opened, so that you can close the relevant brackets as well. Okay. So again, let me just go to the top and then walk you through the code once again that we have written. So these all got imported automatically. The only thing that we did was created a project from an empty layout which had the package name, and then it imported the class in itself. We did not import anything manually. It created a public class with the name main activity, which was extending app compat, and then we had two edit values which the user have the ability of editing, that is number1, val1 and val2 for number1 and number2, and then one text value which we can display, and then 4 buttons. Val1 was mapped with num1, which is the ID for that display. Val2 is mapped with num2, valres is mapped with num3, and then add is mapped with button add. This is the ID for that button, and then subsequently all the buttons have been mapped. And then for each button, for each 4 button, there are 4 buttons in the screen, therefore there has to be 4 on-click listener, right? Because we are going to listen to everything that is happening in all those 4 buttons, right? So we have to set on-click listener for each button that is there in the screen. What is this button doing? The button is taking the value. We have 2 variables. In each variable, we are taking the value from val1 and val2. What is this val1? This val1 is containing whatever we have entered in num1, right? So it got the value from there. We have to use the syntax because we have to convert it to string and then parse it into integer, and then we just have to add it and then display it. So the result is followed by whatever number the result is, right? And the same thing has to be done for everything. We can just make sure, that the indentation and everything is fine, which it is. So everything looks good. So our calculator looks fine. Let's just give it a try and see whether it even runs or not. So let me just click on this run, and then see whether it's launching or not. Okay, so it's launching. Not the prettiest looking calculator, but then again, as long as it does the job, right? So let me just do 190, and then the second value is, let's say, 110. Okay, if I add 190 plus 110, I get 300, which is the right answer. If I multiply them, I get this. I don't know whether that's the right answer or not. If I divide it, I have not added decimals to the answer. In the text value, I could have added decimal as well, but anyways, so let me just divide this by 10 and then see whether we are getting 19 or not. Yes, we are. Let me just multiply this by 10 and see whether 10 is getting added or not. It definitely is. If I add, it is 200. So our calculator seems to be working fine. I mean, nothing much to be done. It just has 4 numbers to calculate with. So we could just play along with it and add something called a square as well, which is going to add the, so when we are doing a square, there will just be one number entered, and then it will be multiplying that number to itself, and then we will be seeing whether that's happening or not. So 5 plus 5, 10, 5 minus 5 is 0, 5 into 5, 25, and this is 1, right? So our calculator seems to be working fine. So our first Android app is now ready. And the only thing left now to be done is a little housekeeping work. But before I do that, let me just show you guys how to generate the APK for this application. So right now we have the source code of this application, but what if we need to deploy this to a bunch of devices via Intune or any MDM, or what if we need to upload this to the Play Store, right? So for that, we need to go to build, and then we have to click on generate signed bundle /apk. I'll click on that, and over here I'll click on the option APK. I'll click on next, and then over here it's asking us for the key store path. So we need to sign this application, right? So any application which we are going to distribute, we have to sign it, or in a way encrypt it. So over here I am going to click on create new, and then I have to provide a key store path. So let me just provide this as the key store path. I mean, I can provide anything. And then in this JKS file, I am going to call this EAI cal. Okay, so there will be a eaical.jks file that is going to be created, which is going to be the key store. And then it's going to ask us for the password. So I'm going to enter password @123 and then confirm the same as well. The alias, if you want, you can change it. I mean, it's up to you. It's just the key alias, and then the password again. And then we have the validity of the APK. I think it can be increased to a maximum of 50 years, but then again, I mean, 25 or 30 is good enough for us. I can enter the first and the last name. So let me just call this Saurabh. I mean, even though I should not be providing my name, because this is the organization's APK, right? And then the OU unit, I can provide NA, and then everything about Intune. And then city is, let's say, Noida, state is UP, and the country code is +91 because I'm in India. Okay, so I just do a OK over here, and then you see that these fields are automatically filled in. I do a next again. In this field, in this section, we are going to select both debug and release, and we are going to select the signature version V1 and V2. And then I am going to click on finish. When I click on finish, Gradle runs the build again. You saw at the bottom there was a Gradle build that ran. And if I click over here, we have an option of clicking on locate. If I click on locate, it takes me to the folder wherein my project is present, that is democal inside of Android Studio. I have to click on release, and over here I see that the release is present. This is app-release.apk, which has the current timestamp, right? And let me just see if there is anything in the new folder or not. You can see that the app.release is over here as well. Its size is 2.7 MB, which means that it's not, I mean, it is quite small. it's not a very big APK, because I mean we haven't done much, right? It is just a calculator application. But now we have a APK which can be uploaded into the Google Play Store, uh, and then I mean it can be distributed via Intune, it can be distributed via any MTM. Okay. All right. Now I want to show you guys a couple of other hygiene related things that you might want to do. If I am running this app, let me just run this app one last time. The emulator is going to start. So I'm going to run the application again, and this time I want to run it on the Nexus. So I've got two devices, Nexus and Pixel. I'm going to click on Nexus, and then I'm going to click on the play button. This is my Nexus device, and there you see the calculator app opens up. Now, I mean, we have already tested that everything works fine. Sorry about that. We have already tested that the application works fine, but what I want to show you guys is this. This is the application demo cal and that we have made, and you see this is the by default icon of that application, and this is the by default image. It has this Android image over here, but I mean nobody would be using this image. Everybody would want to use their customized image, right? So so I mean we would have to make sure that I mean, if we want, we have to change this image as well, right? So let me just quickly show you guys how to change the image. So I'm just going to go to a website. This is the website. You can just go to this website. Sorry. You can just go to this website, and from here you can generate a whole bunch of images. So what we are going to do, as I told you guys earlier, inside MipMap, it contains the default images. So this is the default image that is present, that we saw is being used as well. But I want to change the default image to an image of my choice, right? So again, I don't have a lot of images handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this image. I know it's not the best looking image, but I mean whatever, right? I mean the intent is showing you guys how it is done. So I'm just going to click on image over here, and then I'm going to select this image and do a open. You see that this image comes up over here. If you want, you can do a lot of changing over here. You can change the padding, you can change the color, the background, you can do a whole lot of stuff, right? I don't want to do a lot. Probably I can just change the background to make it look pretty. I'll try to make it look as scary as possible, because that's what I've been doing. But anyways, the name is going to be IC_launcher, and then I'm going to click on download over here. It's going to download a zipped folder, and I'm going to do once it is done, I'm going to do a show in folder, and then I'm just going to copy this and then go back to the place, and I am going to paste it over here, and then I am going to extract this. Okay, so let me just show you guys what is going to be the content of this. This actually is going to contain all the icons that I am going to need. So over here you see that there is this res folder, and this res folder contains all these images, right, in different resolution. So all I need to do is I need to copy all of these, and then I'm going to go back over here, and I am going to delete all these. Or what I can probably do, I can right click over here and then open the place wherein this files are present. So I am just going to say show in Explorer, and then this shows up in the Explorer, right? So I am going to delete everything that is starting with MipMap. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have deleted all of these, and then I am going to paste whatever I downloaded from the website. So this actually contains my images, right? So the 4 folders that we copied. So I've pasted it over here, and now you see that since I have changed those folders inside MipMap, things have changed as well, right? IC launcher, and now you see things have changed. So now let me do this. Let me just run this application again in my emulator. So Gradle is going to run the build again, and once the Gradle runs the build, I think I got an error. So probably what I'll have to do is I'll have to delete the. Okay, it says that resource IC launcher round is not found in the manifest. So I am going to go to the manifest, and over here inside, instead of round icon, probably I can see if I can I'll have to, sorry, I'll have to change this to uh, 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 okay, I've changed this to IC underscore launcher. Okay, and now I run this again. The build is supposed to be successful. The build was successful, and now you see that this launched. I'm going to go back to the home screen, and I have to find it. Okay, here you go. This is the demo cal. I know that that the icon doesn't look the prettiest. All I had to do was I had to change this to point it to the IC launcher, right? Because this is called IC launcher, not IC launcher underscore round, right? So I just had to point it to the right direction. And as you saw, I mean, the error was self-explanatory over here, right? I mean, I don't have the error anymore, but the error was self-explanatory where it was saying that in the main activity, you're referencing IC underscore launcher underscore round, but that does not exist because we have deleted that round and everything over here now is IC underscore launcher, right? And now we were able to successfully change the image. Again, I mean, it's up to you what kind of image and what is it that you want to, I mean, use. But I mean, the intent was showing you guys that the image can be changed as well the way you would want it to, right? Okay, so let me just come back here and talk about what is it that we all did until now as far as app development using Android Studio is concerned, right? So these would be a high level step or 1,000 feet overview of the steps that we followed while we made our application. Obviously, we installed the Android Studio and then we created a project. While we were creating a project, we had to provide a unique name because depending upon the name of the project, the name of the package or the bundle ID was also determined, right? And it needs to be globally unique for us to be able to upload it to the Play Store. Okay, so select the project select the name uniquely and select the suitable template. We selected empty activity, but then it's up to us whatever activity we want to choose. Either we can choose empty activity and then build on it. We'll have to write the code in the layout for that, or we can select a pre-populated template, which will save us some time. Okay, so create the layout with the buttons and the images, which we did, and then write the code and make the buttons functional. This we did as well in the main activity. We wrote the code for the application, and then for each button we created an on-click listener, right? Because every time a button is being clicked, we are going to listen to that, and inside on-click listener we performed the addition and subtraction, whatever was supposed to be done, right? So now inside out, let's say that there is a sign in button, right? So again, there would be an on-click listener for the sign in, and then inside that on-click listener we are going to exchange the tokens or whatever is supposed to be done, right? And then we created the applications launch icon. I just showed you guys how to create the applications launch icon, and then test the app in the emulator. We just ran it in Nexus 5 and everything went fine, and the applications icon launch icon changed as well. I showed you guys how to generate the signed APK. We just have to go to the build, create a key store, and use that to get the .apk and the release folder, and then keep the .jks handy because that is what was used to do the signing, right? And then upload it to the store. A quick overview, what is Gradle? Gradle is nothing. So every time we were launching the application, I mean trying to run the application in the emulator, at the bottom of the screen we could see that the Gradle was running, right? So Gradle is nothing but it's an open source build automation system, and it basically does the job of pulling all the pieces together, gluing everything together so that everything falls into the place and it looks like an APK, and it performs like an application, right? So think of it as like the monitor of the class. There are different students. One is good in maths, one is good in geography, one is good in chemistry. But for the entire class to do well in all the subjects, Gradle is the monitor who is bringing everybody together so that the entire class can do well, let's say in a quiz, right? Wherein all the different, or I mean all the different SMEs of different subjects are coming together, and Gradle is the monitor or the glue that is running the build, that is running the automation and making sure that things are falling into place. Okay, if we use external libraries and APIs, which I'll show you guys later on, if we want to integrate with, let's say, YouTube, right? So then we'll have to ingest the YouTube APIs. Then we tell Gradle, and Gradle takes care of building the project like that for us. Okay, and then these are the two main files that we worked upon, right? One was the main activity, and one was the activity underscore main.xml. Okay, so one is this main activity wherein we wrote the code, and the other was inside layout, the activity underscore main.xml, wherein if we can either go to the code and see the code of the design, or we can go to the design and then look at it in a UI form, right? So activity underscore main contains the UI of how the screen is going to look for the application, right? So main activity, it is by default, it contains a, so if I go into the main activity, by default you see that it contains a class with the name main activity, which is extended, right? So main activity is the name of the class. It's a Java class, right? I could have just right clicked over here and then created a Java class as well, which I showed you guys, during the Java ramp up, right? Okay. It contains a public class, and that public class contains an onCreate method. Over here you see that by default it contains an onCreate method, and this onCreate method is referencing activity underscore main. And what is this activity underscore main? This activity underscore main is the layout. And where is this layout? This is the layout, activity underscore main. If we have multiple layouts and I want this to reference any other layout, then I will have to provide that information over here, the name of that layout. Okay, and the entire code of the application is written over here in the main activity. Activity underscore main.xml, well, this is the XML file which has the layout. It defines how the screen is going to look depending upon the template that we choose. Initially we get this option, right? So if we chose a different template, I mean, the activity underscore main would contain different lines of code, but then again we can always customize it. Like for example, in our case, what we did was in activity underscore main, every time we are drawing a every time we are adding a widget, or every time we are adding a button, the same thing is getting added into the code over here as well, right? So over here we only have an image. What is the image? This is the image, right? And then we have two edit views and one text view and 4 buttons, right? So the same thing is there in the code as well. There is this edit view, there is this image, there is again an edit view, and then there is this text view wherein the result is being shown, and this is the first button, and then this is the second button, and then this is the third button, and then finally this is the fourth button, right? So, and we see all those buttons over here as well, right? Okay. So, and then depending upon the interface that we choose, in some cases we might see a content underscore main as well. In our case, we only see activity underscore main under layout. But if we had chosen a different project, if we had chosen a different layout or a template in the beginning, then probably we could have seen multiple layouts, because there are cases wherein there are, let's say that you are choosing a different kind of menu, right? When you are building the project, then it might have multiple layouts, right? So over here you might be able to see multiple files. Okay. Okay, and one last thing that I wanted to talk about was what exactly is this APK. So think of this APK as nothing but just a zipped file, okay, which contains all the manifest and which contains all the source code and all those stuff, right? So we can even look at that as well. So if I rename this from eaical.apk to eaical.zip, then we can just go, all I did was just rename the extension, and if I do that, then I can go inside the folder and then see the manifest file which is present, and then the rest folder which is present, and whatever the rest folder is exactly containing the layout and all that stuff. Okay. And I even can import this APK in Android Studio as well. So over here I have opened the Android Studio, and I have an option which says that profile or debug APK. I'm just going to click on that, and then I'm just going to point it to the APK in my desktop. So in my desktop I have a APK. I'm just going to point it to that, and then it says it already exists. I'll say that well, okay, create new folder, whatever. and that prompt came because I had already imported it once. But anyways, the EI cal1 is exported, and then this is the APK. If I expand the manifest, I can see the manifest file. This is the manifest file of that application, and over here I can see the bundle ID and all the application theme and whatever we had selected. I mean, whatever was there in the applications manifest, I can see it over there. And then there are there is a bunch of information over here. We can go through all of that. This will contain the permissions, the icons that we are using, and all that stuff, right? So good nifty tool that we can use to get this information if we want to import the APK and then do any kind of debugging. Okay, and one last thing that I wanted to tell you guys for Android Studio was the kind of layout. So this is something that we have not discussed, and I'll make this very quick. So over here in this application, you can see that the kind of layout that we have is linear layout, right? It says that linear layout vertical. What this means is any button or anything that we were dragging onto the screen, it was all in vertical manner. What that means is everything was getting stacked on top of the other. Like we dragged the first button, if I drag another button, it will it gets stacked at the bottom, right? It gets stacked at the very bottom. So this is what linear layout vertical means. But it is not necessary that we would always be going with linear layout. There are other kind of layouts as well. So what I'm going to do, I am going to quickly close this project, and I am going to create a new project. I'll make this very quick. So I'm going to create select the empty activity. I'm just going to name this test. Okay, everything else looks good, and I just want to show you guys what exactly is the significance of creating constraints in a layout. So right now we have already seen this. It creates a default public class, and it has this default on create method and all that stuff. So what I want to show you guys is if I go inside res, and if I go inside layout, and if I only when it loads, if I go inside layout, come on. Okay, and if I go inside activity main, over here by default there is this hello world. I'm going to delete that, and then there is something called constraining a layout. So right now you see that over here I have not selected linear layout over here, right? Which means that things are not going to get stacked on top of the other. So if I click on button, and if I drag a button over here, you see that there are these 4 edges, right? So we have to constrain these 4 edges, and the way we do it is by pulling it. We have to click on this and then click on that circle and pull it to the either sides. We can do the constraints on the left and the right hand side. We can do the constraints on the top and on the bottom as well. Okay, and now if I want to move it to a specific location, I can move it to a specific location. Once I have done this constraint, if I go into the code, you can see that the vertical bias is this. This is on the basis of wherever I placed the button. Now let me tell you what is the significance of this. Think of this button as a sticker or as a paper cutting on a collage. Okay, so what we do is whenever we are making a collage, we take a board, and on that board we put the paper clip, right? Paper cutting. But we have to stick that to the board as well, right? What if we are only putting the paper cutting on top of that board? The moment we take the board and the moment we try to fix it on the wall, everything is going to fall down, right? Therefore, think of this as this paper cutting. So I have a button, I have put this button over here. This is that paper cutting. But this paper cutting needs to be sticked to this board as well, right? Otherwise, right now this board is lying on the floor, therefore everything is at its place. The moment I put this on the wall, it is going to come to the very bottom, right? So, however, in this case, it goes to the very top. So, let me just do this. Let me just try to. So right now over here you see that it's giving me an error, and the error is because I have not constrained it to begin with, right? So right, I think this is right now my emulator is right now powered off. Another example that we can probably take to correlate this is, let's say that I am flying a kite, right? So my kite is there in the sky, and there is a string which is keeping that kite in place, right? What if that string is not there? Well, if the string is not there, then the kite is going to fall down to the bottom, right? It's going to come down to the ground. So it is that string that is making sure that the kite is there where it is supposed to be. Similarly, this button, I know that this button is right now in the screen, but think of it like it's a collage board, and right now the board is lying on the floor, therefore the button is looking fine. The moment we put this collage board on the wall, the button is going to fall down or go up, right? In this analogy it's going to fall down. Therefore we have to stick this button to that specific place in the board, and the way we do it is we constrain it. So we can I can constrain it to the left and the right hand side, or I can constrain it to any other button as well. So if I click on this button, and then if I want to constrain it to this one, let's say that this has now been constrained. Now let's say that I want to place it here. So if I move this down, the first button also comes down, because the first button position is now with respect to the second button's position. We can read more about constraint layouts and what is the significance of constraining and all that stuff. However, this is again a good to know information that if we are not using a linear layout, if we are using a normal layout, then we have to do something called constraining a layout. Only after, so this constraining a layout is equivalent to that string that is holding the kite, or that glue that we are using to stick that collage on the board. Okay. All right. So now I am going to come to the interesting stuff, or the other interesting half, and that is app development using Xamarin. So we have spoken a lot about Android ADK. We have spoken a lot about the Android part, and we have spoken a lot about the Studio part. Now we are going to switch to Xamarin. So let me just do another time over here. And now I am going to close my Studio, because we have done a lot of the stuff with Android Studio now. So let's take a look over Xamarin. So and when we will be working with Xamarin now, we will be seeing that it is a lot like what we were doing with Android Studio, because at the end of the day, we are again creating an application, right? So the way this works is, if we want to code anything in Xamarin, it uses C#, and the tool that we are going to use is Visual Studio. Okay, so we just have to go to a browser. Right now, if I go to start and then type Visual Studio, you see that Visual Studio is not installed, right? But the Android Studio is. Right, so if I type Android, you see over here Android Studio is installed, right? Which we are not going to use. We are going to use Xamarin, which works on Visual Studio. So I'm just going to go to visualstudio.microsoft.com, and then over here I have an option to download the Visual Studio. So I'm just going to click on Community 2019 or whatever, which is going to download the installer for me. So I have already downloaded the installer. I'm just going to right click and run it as an administrator. And then we are going to go ahead with installation of Visual Studio first. If you already have installed Visual Studio, you can just run this setup again. It will give you an option to modify, and then you can check the Xamarin part. So I'm just going to click on continue. It's going to download and install the relevant files, and then we will do the needful. Okay, so now you see that the installation has gone through. So over here we have an option. We can select this, which says that Azure development. Right now this is not really mandatory. So I'm just going to scroll down, and then you see that there is something called mobile development with .NET, build cross-platform application for iOS, Android or Windows using Xamarin. So this is the one that we need. I'm just going to click on this, and then I am going to click on install. Okay, so the installation is still underway. It's right now installing the various components and subcomponents of Xamarin, and it took about 15 odd minutes. And it says that installation package 296, almost 300 of 306. So we are almost done. So once this is done, we'll start playing with Xamarin and start creating our project.
Okay, so the installation is done and this is the launch page. So what I'm going to do, I am going to close everything and then launch it again, so that, I mean, if you already had Visual Studio installed, this is wherein you will be coming to. So you'll be seeing that it takes us to the same page wherein it is asking us whether we want to create a new project or whether we want to open a project or clone a repository or whatever. So we are going to create a new project. Okay, so I just clicked on create a new project, and now there are obviously a lot of templates and I have the option of choosing from that template, right? So what I'm going to type here is Xamarin, and I'm going to choose from here. So here you can see that we have Android app Xamarin, we have the iOS app Xamarin, and then there are other options as well. And then we have the cross platform as well. So if I do a CROSS, over here you see that there is this Xamarin UI test cross platform test project as well, which is going to work on both Android and iOS. So if I want to develop an application which is going to later on work for both Android and iOS, I am going to choose the cross platform. So this is the value add, if you would call it, of having Xamarin rather than working with Android Studio or Xcode, wherein you are limited to that platform. So right now I am going to stick with Android app and then Xamarin. I'm just going to click on that and then click on next. And then it's going to ask us for the name of the application and all that stuff. Before I make a project, let me just show you what is it that we are going to do. So this is the project. I mean, I have already made it once. I will be doing it again from scratch right in front of you. I'll be walking you guys through everything. But let me just show you guys what is the application going to do. So if I click on run, it starts the emulator, and then at the bottom you can see that it was running everything. And then the emulator is going to start. Let me just bring up the emulator. My emulator was powered off. I'm just powering on the emulator. So this is the application. Again, very basic application. All it does is, you can think of it like a counter application. So if I click on increment, you can see that, I mean, the numbers are incrementing. And if I click on decrement, the same numbers state is restored and the number starts decrementing as well, right? So again, I mean, the intent is not showing you guys how to make complex application. The intent is just showing you guys how to create a basic app in Android for Android in Xamarin. And in this case, obviously there are two buttons, and this is like something like a text view, which we have already seen. And then there would be something like an on-click listener to both of these buttons, right? So that is what we are going to reference. So let me just do this. Let me just close this solution. And if a app was open, and if I click on close the solution, then we come back to the same screen which we saw initially. Now I am going to click on create a new project again, and I am going to select a template. So over here, let's say Xamarin, and then from Xamarin, I'm going to select the Android one and then click on next. Over here, just like we did in Android Studio, we have to name our project something. So let me just call this EAI counter. Okay. it stores it in some place. This is the solution name. Everything is fine. I mean, nothing else to be done. I'm just going to click on create, and over here it's asking me for the template. So we used this template in our Android Studio as well, right? Whether you want to use an empty activity or whether you want to use any kind of activity which is going to pre-populate the code for you. Xamarin is also more or less doing the same thing, and over here I am going to click on blank app, right, which is equivalent to empty activity. I'm just going to click on OK, and then it is creating the project for me. And now there you go, the project has been created. Okay, this is the basic default vanilla project that is created for us. And over here you see that it has imported some things. Over here it has imported Android.apps, Android.os, Android.runtime, Android.appcompat. If I had chosen, instead of Android, if I had chosen iOS, then it would import those relevant bundles or packages. If I had chosen the cross-platform, it would import the respective ones. Okay, and over here you see again that it has created a public class with the name main activity. And inside the public class, there is a method called onCreate. And over here, this onCreate is calling the saved instance by default. Okay. It has added this class as well. I don't really need it. So what I'm going to do, I am just going to delete this class. Okay. This is not really needed in the demo that we are going to do. So right now we are under main activity. Where is this main activity? This is the main activity. If I double click over here, the same thing opens up again. So we had a similar thing like main activity in Android Studio as well, wherein we would write the code of the application. And then there is something called the layout, right, which we had in case of Android Studio as well. So over here, if I go into the resources folder, there is this layout. If I expand the layout, there is this activity_mail.xml, and this is the layout. Okay, again, it has given us the default layout, but I have the option of changing it the way I would want it to. And it has the same option. I mean, given that we have seen Android Studio, now this should make more sense to us, right? This is the XML of the layout, and this is the actual layout. If I go into if I go into if I go into view, and then if I go into toolbox, then this is the toolbox. Okay, and this toolbox has all the pointers and buttons and all that stuff, right? So if I click on the button, and then if I add it over here, now you see that the button has been added, right? And whenever I add the button, it adds the respective thing in the XML as well. I'm just going to remove this. But the point that I'm trying to make is over here on the right hand side, we have that tree which has the layout and all that stuff. In the case of Android Studio, we had this on the left hand side, right? Over here, I mean, we have the toolbox which we can add from view. In case of Android Studio, we had it on the right hand side. But what I'm trying to say is, I mean, more or less it is the same thing. Over here also we can see the XML, we can see the layout, we can add the buttons, add images, add whatever we want to do, right? So if we correlate, then more or less it is the same thing. So now what we are going to do, we are going to add, so we have already seen the application that we are going to make. It is going to contain a text view which is going to display the number, and on the bottom of it there are going to be two buttons. One is the increment, one is the decrement, right? So right now I need to add two buttons and then a text view. So one option is going to the toolbox and then dragging the buttons over here, right? Which we have already seen, that is the easier way. Now I want to show you the other way, and the other way is if I write the code or if I write it in the XML, it is going to inculcate the button over here. What I'm trying to say is, if I drag the button over here, you see that the respective code for the button by itself gets added, right? So now if I have to add another button, I can either drag and drop over here, or I can write a code for another button which is going to place another button on the screen depending upon the code that I have written. So I'm just going to show you the other way around in this case. Okay, so we are going to use some reverse engineering in this case and then write the code directly. So obviously the first thing that we need is a button. So I'm just going to type in button and then do a enter. Sorry. So just when I type button and I do a enter, it by default adds the width and the height. Let me just do it to you. Let me just do it again. Button. Just when I do an enter, you over there see that it has added the Android colon layout width and height, because obviously if there is going to be a button, it is going to have a width and it is going to have a height, right? So the width is going to be match parent. So just going to click on this and just going to do a match parent, and the height is going to be wrap content. So this is like pretty very basic. I'm just going to click on wrap content. Okay. And then on the right hand side, you can see that it has already put in a button for us. Obviously it is not displaying anything because we have not added any text. So let's do that. I'm just going to say Android colon text, and the text is going to say something. So there are two buttons. This button is going to say increment. Okay. It is going to say increment, and okay. Okay, so this is going to the first line wherein we are defining what kind of what is going to be the name, and then we have determined the width and the height, and then the next thing that we are going to do is we have to tell the Xamarin Studio, or the in this case the Visual Studio, where exactly is this button going to be placed. As in over here we don't have anything like I mean we are not doing any kind of a layout or constraining, right? So we have to tell that this button is going to be at this distance from the screen, from the screen's edge, or at this distance from the screen's top, right? So for that what we are going to do is we are going to use a parameter called margin bottom and margin top, right? So again it's very simple. So I'm just going to do an Android colon layout OUT. Again I'm trying to write very slowly just in case I get a hint, so that whatever I have to write is minimized. In this case I'm not getting any hint, so I'm going to do an underscore and then margin bottom. So margin bottom. So I'm just going to do a margin bottom, and this is going to be let's say 80 dp. Okay, so this dp is defining this dp is density pixel, which is defining how much of distance we are going to put from the top and how much of distance we are going to put from the bottom. We have defined the bottom, now we are going to define the top. So I'm just going to do an Android colon layout and then underscore margin top is equal to, now I'm going to put in how much I want it from the top. So let's just do a 80 dp again. Okay, so now this one has been set, and again this just like we did in case of Android Studio, each button has an ID, right? So once we do a drag and drop, the ID gets created automatically. However, over here we are not doing a drag and drop, so we have to put in the ID manually. Okay, I have to make sure I'm spelling it right. And then what I'm going to do, Android colon ID, and the ID is going to be we are going to use the same naming convention as we had over there. So it's @ plus ID slash, and then I can name it anything. So I'm just going to name it button 1 colon and then this naming convention, right? So this is what a button would look like. Okay, the button has a text, the button has a width, the button has a height, it has a margin bottom, it has a margin top, and it has an ID, right? If I drag and drop a button, all these things get populated automatically. So now I have to do the same thing for another button. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy it and then paste the same thing again. And I am just going to call this, instead of increment, I am just going to call this decrement. So it is decrement, and then the width and the height would remain the same, that is, it is going to be match parent and wrap content. However, the margin bottom is something that we have to change. So let me just put this to 150 dp, and the margin top is going to be, let's say, 200 dp. Okay, and then we have to change the ID as well. So I'm just going to call this button ID button 2. Okay, so over here you see that there are actually two buttons over here, but it is one on the top of the other. Therefore we are able to see the decrement, but we are not able to see the increment button. Okay, so the button is on top of the other. We are going to fix that. How are we going to fix that? Before we fix that, we have to add something else. What is it that we have to add? We have to add the text view. So I'm just going to enter the text view. Before even I do that, I'm just going to click on the text view and then put an enter, and then the text view is auto populated, right? So I am going to enter the text view here, and the text view is going to look like this. Right now there are these red squashes, so don't get worried by that. Text view, so by default, whenever I enter text view, you see again that the layout width and the layout height has been added. So let's do a layout width to the same as we have for the button. So we are just going to say layout width is equal to match parent, and then the layout height is also going to be the same, which is going to be wrap content. Okay, so I'm just going to do a wrap content, and then the rest can wait. Well, obviously the text view is going to have some text as well, right? So I'm just going to say Android :text. Again, waiting in case I get any suggestions, which I'm not, which is absolutely fine. I'll just type it out. So Android :text is equal to 0. I'm just putting something, and then I want to define the size of the text, right? So for that, what I can do a Android :text size, and then the text size can be whatever I want it to be, right? So Android :text size, let's say this is going to be 50, in this case SP and not DP. Okay, so SP and DP, they are both ways of determining what exactly so this is not exactly density pixel, this is in a way size aspect ratio. And then I want it to be in the center. So for center we have something called Android gravity. So Android gravity. So it by default shows you Android gravity, and then over here I'm going to say center. Okay, so I have an option of determining where I want it to be. So we have the text size, we have the gravity, we have the layout width and height. Now we obviously need the Android ID, right? This text view needs to have an ID. So that is what we are going to put in now. So let's say that after height, let's add the ID here, and then let's say that Android :ID, and we are going to use the same naming convention as we used before. That is going to be @ plus ID, and then slash. Let's call the ID as text view, because I just want it to be, I just want the name to signify what is it that we are doing, and then just put a space over here, and then I'm just going to close this. Okay, so over here you see that we are able to see that 0 over here, but it is at the background. So at the background there is this 0, and then there is the increment button, and then on top of that there is this decrement button, which obviously we are going to fix. But right now I just want to write the XML first, after which we are going to take care of that. So obviously if the 0 is over here, we will have to place the 0 someplace else, right? How do we do that? We put in the margin bottom and the margin top, right? Just like we have done it over here. So I'm just going to copy the Android layout margin top and Android layout margin bottom, and I'm just going to paste it over here. And obviously I'll have to change the values. So over here, let's put this to 40 dp instead. So I'm going to put this to 40 dp margin top, and then there has to be a margin bottom as well. So the margin bottom can be also set to 40 dp. So I am just going to copy this, paste this over here, make sure it looks pretty, and then I am just going to put this as 40 dp. Okay. Okay, just when I do that, now you see that everything has fallen into place. We are just going to review everything. So by default, this is the first thing that we added, that was the text view. You see that whenever I double click on this, the same thing gets highlighted over here. The Android text is 0. The text size is 50 sp, which is the size of how big this 0 is going to display. So if I mean, obviously if I change this to 10, then you see that 0 becomes very small, right? So I'm just going to restore it to 0 because it looks fine. And then the Android gravity is a center. If I change this from center to, let's say, left, then it is going to be on the left of that screen. But I want it to look on the, I want it to be on the center so that it looks better. Okay. And then the layout width and the layout height is going to be match parent and wrap content respectively. And then I have provided it a ID to this view, just like this ID gets auto created if I drag and drop, but over here I've provided it an ID. This ID can be anything. And then the layout margin is 40 dp from the bottom and 40 dp from the top, right? Which is defining where exactly is the 0 going to be placed. And then I have the two buttons. First is the increment button and the second is the decrement button. Both of them have different layout margin. One has 80 dp and 80 dp, the other one has 150 dp and 200 dp. If I change this, then obviously this is going to move in the screen. And obviously if I had done it via the toolbox, I could have just dragged and dropped it to the place where I wanted to, and then this would get auto populated accordingly. So both the buttons look more or less the same, just the text is different, the layout top and the bottom margin is different, and the ID of both the buttons is different, right? So this is how the XML is going to be. We can just use the interface to build this for us, or if we want, we can reverse engineer and do it the other way. Okay, so right now what I can do is, if I when I install the Visual Studio along with Xamarin, the emulator also gets installed. Now I can go to Android Device Manager and I have the option of installing additional emulators as well. So by default, you will see that there is only one emulator, which is Nexus 6. I can just install, I can just click on a new and then install additional emulators as well, and then use the image that I want to. Okay, so I'm just going to use the default one, and right now let's do this. Let's run this and see whether this is running fine or not. So over here you see that it's running fine. But the only thing is, right now it is running this is running the old application, that is app 4. This is not our application. We are going to run our application, which is EAI counter, right? So what I'm going to do, I am going to close all of this, and then I don't see EAI counter over here, right? It just shows me the app 2 and app 4, and then it does the demo cal, which I installed in from the Android Studio, right? Let me just minimize this, and so whenever you see that this toolbox is right over here, right? So if you want to remove the toolbox, you can remove it like this. Now on the right hand side, there was that solution box, right? So if I want to bring that box again, I will have to search from here, and then I will have to add it back. So if I click on Solution Explorer, right now over here you see that the Solution Explorer is back, right? So I'm just going to close this, and then I'm just going to run this again. So now you see that the EAI counter application is running. We have to be sure that we are running the right application, right? So I'm just going to go to the home, and then over here you can see that EAI counter application is here. It is by default using the default icon, which we are going to change later. The thing that is not going to happen right now is if we click on that buttons, nothing is going to happen on the buttons because we have not attached on click listeners to these buttons, right? So this XML is defining how the screen is going to look when the application launches. But if I want the buttons to do something, then I have to write the code for that button, which we are going to do now. So where are we going to do? Obviously, we are going to do that in the place wherein the code of the application is going to be written, which obviously is not activity_main, but it is main activity. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the main activity. I've deleted the files and the lines that I did not need over here. Right now, it just imports the relevant packages, which is absolutely fine. And then it has as we have already discussed, it has one class and it has one method. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I am going to write a few lines of code, and then we are going to understand what exactly is that code for. So we are going to try and imagine what we did in Android Studios. Therefore, this is going to make more sense. So we have got two buttons and one text view, right? So what we are going to do over here is we are going to first define the text view. So we have a text view over here, and the text view, let's call this text view 1, okay, colon, and then enter. Right now you see that this is showing this red squiggly thing. I'm going to click on show potential fix, and then it's telling us that I am going to use, we have to import this Android.widget. Right now you see at the top the Android.widget is not imported. So I'm just going to click on that, and now you see that Android.widget has been imported, and this is no longer showing me that red squiggly thing, right? The next thing that I'm going to define is a number, because that is the number which is going to increment or decrement, right? So let's call this private int, and then let's call this number, right? Plain and simple. Okay, now I'm going to go inside so this is what we all did in the main class. Okay, now I am going to go inside the onCreate method, and then I am going to write some code in the onCreate method. Over here you see that this comment is there. I'm just going to remove the comment because we already know what this is for. Okay, so now I'm going to enter a couple of lines of code over here. The first thing is we have to do the find view by ID, right? So our text view 1, the text view 1 is, what is this text view 1? Whatever is entered in the main.xml, right? So if we are just going to use the same logic that we use in the Android Studio, so the text view 1 is going to be the same command, find view by ID, and then what kind of view is it? This is optional, but still I'm just going to write a text view over here. Okay, and then how do we locate that? We locate that by typing in the resource r.id or the resource.id, that is the full form, right? So I'm just going to type in resource. I'm just trying to see if it autofills. It does not in this case, which is absolutely fine. So I'm just going to say resource.id dot whatever the view is, right? So in this case it is text view 1. Okay, and then so right now what we are saying is this text view 1 is equal to resource.id.text find view by ID, and this, and what is this resource.id.text view 1 resource, and then id.text view 1, and over here if I come over here, then we have this text view 1 over here. Okay, so we are trying to reference this. by using the same analogy like we did in case of Android Studio. Okay, and then now we are going to use lambda operation. Okay, so what we are going to, now we have to put in the on-click listener, right? So over here in C#, the on-click, the way we define the on-click listener is a little different. Right now I have found the text view one, whatever we are going to display over here. But now we have to put in the code which is going to check every time the increment button or the decrement button is going to be pressed, right? Whenever increment button is going to be pressed, I am going to increase the text view 1 by a value of 1. And whenever the decrement is clicked, I am going to decrease the text view 1 by a value of 1, right? So for that, I'm going to put in the on-click listener. Over here, the on-click listener is a little different. I'm going to use a lambda, which is going to be find view by ID. And then in this case, I'm going to put in button. Okay. And then I am going to say resource.id.button1. So right now I am referencing the first button, which is the increment button. So it is resource resource.id.button button1. And what is it? The B is going to be small, sorry, button button1. And what is it that we are trying to do? I am going to attach the on-click listener to it, right? So I'm just going to say dot click, and then this is a lambda operation plus equal to, and then O comma E, and then equal to the sign. And what is it that I'm going to say over? So this is think of it like a command which is trying to find out whenever that button is placed. Okay, whenever that button, that increment button is clicked. And whenever that increment button is clicked, what is it that we want to do? We want to increase the value of text view 1 by a value of 1, right? So what I'm going to say, I'm going to say text view dot text, this is equal to, I'm going to increase the number, so plus plus number, and then I am going to convert this to string. Okay, so dot to string. Okay, this is what the I'm sorry, over here it is, I selected text alignment center. I don't need text alignment center, I just need text view dot text. Okay, all right, and then obviously the same thing needs to happen for the decrement button as well, right? So I'm just going to copy and paste the same thing, and then I am just going to do a minus minus, and over here instead of button 1 it's going to be button 2. So whenever, so this line is signifying whenever the first button is placed, is clicked, think of it like the on-click listener. This line is determining whenever the second button, that is the decrement button, is clicked, because button 2 is the ID for the decrement button. And whenever that is happening, what is it that we are doing? We are in this case decreasing the number, or in this case, or in the case above, we are increasing the number, right? So this is what the code is going to be. And then obviously we are closing the parenthesis. And if we are getting any errors, we can always right click on it and then click on show potential fixes, and then it's going to show us what are the potential fixes, what is it that we might have got wrong. Okay, and once the app is ready, then obviously we are just going to click on that emulator. We can install a new emulator as well if we choose to do so, and then I mean it is going to increment and decrement the way we want it to. Right, so I mean what I'm trying to say is, and then we can always build the APK out of this application and then deploy it to the devices, right?
So I was facing some errors in generating the APK, but I'll still show it to you guys anyways. So I just have to click, it's very easy, just have to right click on the application, go to properties, and in the Android option, make sure that the runtime has been disabled, which I have disabled over here. So if I go to Android options, in all these options, the Android mono runtime needs to be disabled. Once that is done, we just need to right click on it and then click on archive. So if I'm clicking on archive over here, you see that the archival is failing because the use shared mono runtime for some reason is still showing as active for me. So this is a recording on how it is showing. If you are using Visual Studio 2017, then these two options will come up, which we'll have to uncheck. That is use shared runtime. As we are not using, so this only needs to be unchecked when we are going to get the APK. While the normal debugging, it has to be checked. And in the linking properties, we have to set this to SDK assemblies only. Okay, but then again, this only has to be done while we are getting the APK. Now just right click on our application and then we'll click on archive again. Once we click on archive, then this should go through, and now we will get this option of open folder and distribute. So now if we recall, when we were doing this in Android Studio, we have to create the key store, right? That is what we are going to create now. So we'll just now we just want to get the APK, so we'll click on ad hoc, not on Google Play, and once we do that, once we click on ad hoc, it will give us the option of generating the key store. So I'm just going to click on this plus icon over here, and once I do that, it will let us create the key store files, which is going to be used for signing the application. So I'm just going to enter the alias, enter the key store enter the validity, the password, the OU, and all that stuff, and then it should be good. So I click on, so I entered all the information, and then I just have to do a save as, and then you will see that the APK is going to be created. It will prompt us for the same password that we have used for our key store. So I'm just going to enter that same password over here again. I do a OK, and then everything falls into place and the APK is extracted. Okay, so I have a emulator here, and this emulator has got 5 applications installed in it. As you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, these 4 applications are written by Xamarin, and this one was written in Android Studio. But if you see the icons, the look and the feel of all these 5 applications is going to be native. What I mean by that is it does not feel like the application was designed for some other OS and now it's running in some other OS. If you look at the icon, if you look at the launch, if you look at anything, the application is going to look and feel as if it was designed for this particular operating system as well. And when we are looking at this application, we cannot look at this application and say that, okay, you know what, this application was written in Xamarin or Android Studio or vice versa. Well, obviously right now it has this default X over here, but I could have changed the icon, the launch icon as well, right? And if I do that, then the end user cannot look at the application's icon or the application's interface and find out whether the application was written in the specific operating system or whatever. I mean, written using a specific platform or whatever, right? So the applications look and feel for both the apps, irrespective of how they were developed, is exactly the same. That is native. So this is one of the advantages of writing an application in Android Studio, obviously, because that is created by the creator, but same thing goes with native as well, Xamarin as well, when it looks and feels like native. Now if we do a quick comparison between Android Studio and Xamarin, then in Android Studio, as we know and we have seen already, we can develop only .apk, but in Xamarin we could use Xamarin.ios or Xamarin.android or Xamarin.forms, and we could develop both APK and IPA, and the same code can be reused. Now in this also there is a layout, in this also there is a layout. Well, obviously the hierarchy, if you would call it, might be different. Like in this case, it was there on the left hand side, and then there was this rest folder. Inside rest there was this layout, and then there was this activity _main.xml. Okay, and in this case on the right hand side we had the solutions tab, and over there we had the resources. Well, over here we had res, and over here we have resources, and under resources we have the layout, and then under layout we have activity underscore main.xml. But both of them are doing the same job, that is they are determining how exactly the application is going to look like whenever it is launched. And then as far as the manifest is concerned, in this case there was this folder called app, and inside app there was this manifests, and inside the manifest there was this Android manifest.xml. Over here in this case the name of that application will show, we have to expand that, and then main activity .cs, and inside main activity.cs it is going to contain the main activity for the code of the application, right? The manifest is going to be present in the same location, therefore I have not mentioned it again. In this case the app's code is present under the Java folder, and then we have to click on that bundle ID and then main activity over there, right? So I mean obviously layout is present in both the cases, manifest is also present in both the cases, the main activity is also present in both the cases, wherein the main activity contains the actual code of the application, which determines whenever you're clicking on any button then what is happening. Both the cases have a on-click listener in a way or the other. The syntax might be different. Both the cases have a you will see something like a main class, and inside of the main class there will be a maybe a on create method or things like that, right? In case of Android Studio has its own installer which we downloaded and installed. However, for Xamarin we install the Visual Studio, and while doing the modify we have an option of clicking on that checkbox for Xamarin, right? And when we were writing the code for Android Studio we were using Java. We have an option of selecting between Java and Kotlin. However, in this case we were using C#. And then finally in both the cases the developed app looks 100% like native, just like we saw right now. Okay, so that's pretty much it, guys. I mean the intent of this session was first of all showing you guys what are the different ways of doing this kind of development for any kind of application, the difference between all these three, when should we use the Android Studio, when should we use Xamarin. In one of the future nuggets maybe I'll show you guys Xcode as well when I have my hands on a MacBook. And then most importantly taking a look over the source code of an application, because in the future nuggets we are going to integrate an application with the Intune SDK and MSAL. And when we are going to do that, if we have not already seen how an application under Android Studio or how an application under Xamarin looks like in Visual Studio, then I mean a direct jump over that would be a difficult thing to correlate with, right? So I mean that was the intent of this session, and I hope that now we have an understanding of why do we have so many different frameworks, which one to use when, and if and when we choose to go with one of these techniques, then how to develop the most basic of the application and run it on emulator, right? So I hope guys that this has been informative for you. I would like to thank you for viewing. This is your friend Saurabh Sarkar signing off.